So hi, good morning everyone. We are the group T and we will be discussing about the visual and multimedia communication.
Greetings to everyone. Welcome to Lesson 4 with a topic entitled Visual and Multimedia Communication.
Let us all have an overview. Nowadays, communication and technology are inseparable. With our expansive exposure to mass media, we are visually oriented. A phenomenon that the 21st century learners are certainly visual. Because of this influence, it may be considered that we need most of the time technology tools or multimedia in presentations. Our audience is likely to expect us to use presentational aids to provide a visual component to our speech. According to Verderber and Selnot 2010, presentational aids are any visual, audiovisual, or multimodal materials used in a speech for the purpose of helping the audience understand some points of our speech.
Visual component. Elements are the building blocks or basic units in the construction of a visual image. These are line, shape, form, color, value, texture, and space. Line is the most basic element of design. It is fundamental in the creation of an image. This can be horizontal, vertical, diagonal, straight, curved, dotted, broken, thick, and thin. Some are obvious line and others are implied. Shapes can be two-dimensional or flat. Enclosed areas create an outline. Examples are geometric circles, triangles, squares, and ovals, as well as some or all other forms. They can be found anywhere in the world. Forms are three-dimensional. These are the geometric cube, sphere, and cone. These also include organic forms such as people, animals, tables, and chairs. Next is the color. Color is described by three characteristics: hue, value, and saturation. Hue refers to the particular spectrum of light activated. Value is the tonal degree of light and dark. Saturation refers to the level of purity with the spectrum of light activated. It shapes our perceptions and shapes our emotion. Texture. Texture refers to the surface quality, the way it feels or the way it looks. This can be real or implied by different uses of media. It is the degree of roughness or smoothness in objects. Simply, this can be the feel, appearance, thickness, or stickiness of a surface. Is it silky or furry or velvety? And the last element is space. Space is either positive or negative in an image. Positive space is the main subject in the visual, and then negative space is the rest of the space in the same visual. This simply means that an area around, within, or between images or parts of an image relating to perspective. Here is the visual for line, shapes, forms, color, value, texture, and space.
Hi, good day. This is Jacob, and I will be tackling all about this portion. So, this is active reading. Students, to become critical readers and thinkers, use careful judgment about the positive and negative aspects of something that is being evaluated. Yes, I really strongly agree about this one because as a 21st century students, we are really more critical readers and thinkers and more careful giving our judgment to a work of hand or a piece, which is a really good way for us to express the negative and the positive side of the specific piece or work of hand. It is also emphasized here that this is and now, let us define visual. The best example for me about this one is today's generation, millennials are basically visual and critical because of their extensive exposures to computer technology. In most cases, some, if not all learners, oftentimes spend their free time at the neighboring internet cafes doing their various rituals, computer gaming, Facebooking, and a lot more social media ventures. Unknowingly, they have this ability to interpret, recognize, create, or manipulate images. This is a very good example and a very correct statement because most of the students or even 21st century youth right now are really into social media, into Facebook, Instagram, TikTok, without knowing that everything that they are seeing on that platforms are very useful, especially that when they interpret and create or manipulate it. And so I think we have to utilize more about the usage of our social media platforms, especially that in today's generation there are a lot of things that's alarming because of the abusive use of. A visually literate individual has the ability to interpret, use, appreciate, and create images and video using both conventional and 21st century media in ways that advance critical thinking, decision making, communication, and learning. I really agree with this as well because I believe that a visually literate individual has all of this capability and ability, but I also believe that we are all capable and we all have the ability. It's just that we are not aware of it. It's just that we don't know how to use it. That is why we have to wake up. We have to know that we are capable of doing things, that we are capable of creating, and we are capable of appreciating things and be better as well.
So good morning everyone, I am Annalisa Cortez and I will be the next reporter. Principles. Design principles are used to organize the basic elements of text into pleasing and interesting images. Good design is possible without understanding the principles of design, but it may take a lot of trial and error to create something that both looks good and creates an optimal user experience. Design principles are fundamental pieces of advice for us to make easy to use, pleasurable designs. We apply them when we select, create, and organize elements and features in our work. Design principles represent the accumulated wisdom of researchers and practitioners in design and related fields. When we apply them, we can predict how users will likely react to our designs. Balance and harmony. This refers to the sense of distribution of perceived visual weights that offset one another. Balance is every element of a design: typography, colors, images, shapes, patterns, and other more carries a visual weight. Some elements are heavy and draw the eye, while other elements are lighter. The way these elements are laid out on a page should create a feeling of balance. We feel more comfortable and therefore visually satisfied when the parts of an image seem to have balance or be in harmony with one another. Imbalance gives a sense of disharmony, which is usually not intention of the creator. There are two types of balance: symmetrical and asymmetrical. Symmetrical designs lay out elements of equal weight on either side of an imaginary center line. Asymmetrical balance uses elements of differing weights, often laid out in relation to a line that is not centered within the overall design. Harmony is a pleasing agreement of parts or combination of parts in a composition. Harmony involves the selection or design of elements that share a common trait. However, harmony becomes monotony without variety. Common traits, orientation, colors, or value shapes, or size, materials variety, the extent of differences in a design elements. Visual interest is enhanced by introducing the similar elements in spatial arrangements. This picture is one of the examples of balance and harmony. A slightly off-centered layout lends balance between the bold image in minimalist typography and the new Q's website. Next is pattern. Pattern is a combination of elements or shapes repeated in a predictable or recurring and regular arrangement. Patterns are nothing more than a repetition of multiple design elements working together. Wallpaper patterns are the most ubiquitous example of patterns that virtually everyone is familiar with. Pattern is used to symbolically represent many things, people, beliefs, and the specific meanings, and they are passed down from generation to generation. In design, however, patterns can also refer to set standards for how certain elements are designed. For example, the tab navigation is a design pattern that the majority of internet users have interacted with. The tab navigation is one of the most ubiquitous design patterns on the internet. The predictability of pattern is important establishing a historical tradition and cultural practices. Proportion can be used to draw attention to an object or be playful, all to make a point or cause awareness. It creates unity when all parts work together. This image here is one of the example of proportion. The proportional differences between the tiny type and large images clearly delineates which elements are the most important on Colin Hogg's website. So next is emphasis. Emphasis draws attention to a focal point. It deals with the parts of a design that are meant to stand out. In most cases, this means the most important information the design is meant to convey. This is done by constructing shapes or colors in the image to feature one aspect. With emphasis on a certain part, we are able to highlight what is most important in a photograph. Emphasis can also be used to reduce the impact of certain information. This is most apparent in instances where fine print is used for an ancillary information in a design. We must note that if everything is emphasized, nothing will stand out. This picture here is one of the example of emphasis. The click's oversized typography clearly emphasizes its tagline. Tiny photography tacked away at the bottom of a page carries much less weight than almost anything else in a design and is therefore de-emphasized. And next is contrast. Contrast is a distinct difference between elements of a form or composition, either visually or in subject matter. I'll set an example of a contrast, which is if one of the most common compliance designers have about client feedback often revolves around clients who say a design needs to pop more. Well, that sounds like a completely arbitrary term. What the client generally means is that the design needs more contrast. Contrast refers to how different elements are in a design, particularly adjacent elements. These differences make various elements stand out. Contrast is also a very important aspect of creating accessible designs. Insufficient contrast can make text content in a particular very difficult to read, especially for people with visual impairments. Visual contrast can be achieved through the use of intense complementary colors. The picture here is one of the example of contrast, where it is an excellent example of a high contrast design. As what you have seen, we can easily read the text because it has a very good contrast.
Movement. In visual images, movements come from the kind of shapes, forms, lines, and curves that are used. Diagonal lines tends to create the illusion of movement or motion. Changes in direction, darkness or lightness, or connecting or overlapping shapes can imply movement for restlessness. A series of images shown as individual, like a comic strip, provide a sense of movement through time. Rhythm. This is created when an element is repeated over and over again, like many lines or shape or colors. It could be a specific content like many shoes, faces, or cars. It creates a feeling of organized movement and is like music that it has beat. Unity. It refers to the relationship among the elements of an image that helps them function together. It helps to organize an image and give it a sense of oneness. In other words, the word and image work together to create a meaning. Unity can be achieved through the use of shapes and patterns, the use of space, or a common background. Perspective. It is otherwise known as a point of view. Depending on the perspective, you may have a new and unique way of seeing particular sight. We are so used to seeing things in our own point of view that it stimulates our sense to see something new.
Multimodality. Multimodality is simply a term for describing all the different ways we employ in communicating with each other every day. This may be via spoken language, texting, tweeting, emailing, handwriting, body language, and gesturing, or by using a communication device. Every time we read a newspaper, watch television, play a video or computer game, or even read a book, we deal with multimodal text on daily basis. Multimodality involves the complex interweaving of words, image, gestures, and movements and sounds, including speech. This can be combined in different ways and presented through a range of media. Multimodality can be used to build inventories of the semiotic resources, organizing principles, and cultural references that modes make available to people in particular place and times. The actions, materials, and artifacts people communicate with. Modes of communication. There are four modes of communication. First, writing or print, including typographical elements of font size, types, and shapes. Next, images, including moving and still, diagrammic or representational. Next, sound, spoken words and music. And the last one is gestures and movement. Mediums of communication. Computer, internet information and software information. Paper-based text, picture books, magazines, novels, and information books. Sound and visual media, radio, television, CDs, and DVDs.